Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts. I am Diane Southard, founder and CEO of Your DNA Guide and host of today's event. Today, my guest is Mags Gaulden. Mags, welcome to Ask the Experts.
Hey, Diane, it's so fun to be here and to be considered an expert, to be here in your company.
Well, we are pleased that you're joining us all the way from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And you've just told me that it's 90 degrees out and your air conditioning has gone out. So especially thank you for weathering the weather today. To introduce Mags, for those of you who may not be as familiar with her as I am, she has dedicated decades to researching family history and explaining the role of genetics in genealogy. She was born and raised in the United States and developed an early interest in family history and genealogy. She started researching her own family tree, which led her to discover the power of genetic genealogy. Mags is the founder of Grandma's Genes, a genealogy consultation firm in Ottawa, and MitoYDNA.org, a free and accessible Y and mitochondrial DNA database for the genealogy community. Mags is also a leader at Wikitree, a collaborative global family tree genealogy website. She co-leads the DNA integrators team to further the DNA features of Wikitree. So we are very excited to talk DNA and genealogy with Mags today.
I like DNA.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I think we all do. So I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into DNA, will you answer this question? Can you tell us just about a specific experience or discovery that sparked your passion for genealogy?
I've got chills just even thinking about it. Just chills. Your book, the great book that you just released, I actually told this story there. My grandmother has a story of weirdness with her family. My grandmother was a little bit of an unusual character and ended up alienating people. And, she was one of those characters in the family. And so her biological family always said, well, she's just adopted, to try and make up excuses for her. Well, she was actually sent away at a very young age to live in another city away from her family. She grew up without them. And when I contacted several of her close family members to see if they would DNA test, they said no. And I'm like, well, I want to make sure there's a connection there. And eventually I got an ancestry DNA test. And when I went on Ancestry, all of those people had tested and I was absolutely a match. But the way I proved it for my grandmother is I did the mitochondrial DNA. So my very first test was a mitochondrial DNA test. And it was to establish whether or not my grandmother was a part of the family that she raised me, that she was a part of, like sat me on her knee as a kid. That's when I started genealogy, was in her lap.
Wonderful. It's beautiful to think how just the life of one person, and maybe even just one question from one person, is enough to inspire an entire life dedicated to something. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so was there a specific challenge? You talked a little bit about this just now, but maybe you could explain a little more. Maybe there's something different you want to tell us about a challenge in your family tree that led you to understand this power of genetic genealogy.
Well, and here's one. My Templeton families. I would go to these wonderful Templeton reunions every year at Lake Greenwood. We'd go water skiing. It was a big party. And every year, all of my Templeton cousins growing up, we all talked about how Scottish we were, and how we had a Scottish clan in South Carolina chartered for the Templeton family. And I started just doing the paper research, and things weren't adding up to Scotland. And I kept going to these reunions and saying, I don't think that we're Scottish. There's something going on in Ireland with us. Eventually, with Big Y, I was able to absolutely definitive find out that we are absolutely Irish and we're not Scottish. But we do have a beautiful tartan that I want to wear to a wedding this summer. So,
well, I think that fashion choices should be influenced more by what you feel connected to, right? And less about what your biology might say, though I'm sure many people would disagree with me there. But so I think that, well, everybody just heard me read your bio. So you've made lots of contributions to the genetic genealogy world. But the one that I'm most grateful for and most excited about, and I want you to talk the most about, is Mido Yna DNA. So tell us what this database is and kind of what precipitated the creation of it.
Well, you did.
I did.
You did. Well, you did. Your original work in the world of genetic genealogy and genetics in general had a lot to do with Y and mitochondrial DNA. And over the years, you and I have talked about our passion for that work and your passion for your work and how you worked for your, on your own family, your mother, and all of that. It's always been something that I've heard from you. And hearing other people like you that were colleagues talking about how why mitochondrial is important. And there were these databases that a company had that were up, and because of the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation from the UK, that those two databases were taken down because it was too onerous of a job to try and keep them running and take care of all the privacy concerns. So they were taken down. Some other integral parts of genetic genealogy were taken down as well as a part of that. So the first thing that I did was I started talking to friends who had the same interest that I did in trying to keep those alive. I actually contacted the president or the owner of the company who had owned those and asked him if I could purchase those databases to build on. And it was a very emphatic no. And I understand it absolutely why it was an emphatic no, because of the GDPR issues, about the privacy issues. And that's one of the things that I have a great deal of respect for, is having privacy covered. So I just started talking to people, and pretty soon the word spread, and one of the best programmers in the world, in our industry, even Rob Worthen, I just turned around, and he had already heard all about it from Gail French. And I said, "Hey, Rob, do you want to?" He was like, "Don't even finish." Yes. So Rob jumped in with me, and you were in the background in my ear telling me, your ideas and your expectations too. I think you were almost excited about the start of this stuff as I was, and you were such a great mentor and help for me in doing that stuff. You probably don't even know that, but you were. So Rob jumped in, Gail French jumped in. Gail French is a genetic genealogist with DNA Angels. He was also a NASA engineer with the space shuttle program. So we had a rocket scientist on our team. That was good till he retired. Peter Roberts was there with me at the very beginning. We added Leanne Kruger, we added Kevin Borland, we added Jamie Roberts. Andy Hochreiter has joined the team to carry the East Coast Genetic Genealogy Conference, which is one of our babies. But the database, I discovered using the old database, YSearch, that the guess that I had been making about my surname for years and years and years was correct from YSearch. There were all of these people who had the spelling of my name with an ing at the end. And I had seen that. I had guessed that it was. I couldn't quite make sure that it was. There were some records, and I'm like, no, that's just a misspelling. But seeing it on YSearch and seeing those matches to my dad with that spelling absolutely cemented to me that I was a Gaulden, and Gaulden was a derivative of that. And what more important information can you find from a Y-DNA test than a surname?
Yeah.
So I knew how important it had been to me. I knew what that discovery felt like. I also knew what the discovery with the mitochondrial DNA for the Mido search site was as well. And so the team that I had put together, we are absolutely a team. We get together and we created this cute little site with a great big database. We've got about 11,000 people so far, and we've been growing consistently. We've never had a month where we didn't grow. So we're growing. We're almost to 11,000. And we have statistics that people can see. We have tools where they can research stuff, past, present, and future, because we have Sorensen kits in our database. So people that know about us can put their Sorensen data information up. We take kits from every possible DNA testing company that has been, and we hope to carry that through into the future. We're working on maybe pulling the information we need from whole genomes. We work with STRs almost specifically, but now that we have the big Y700, we have lots of SNPs in our system now. So we're wondering about possibly working on some SNP tools that aren't out in that people say, I wish I could do this with my SNPs. And, and I do, full disclosure, I have done some stuff with Family Tree DNA about their site and what kind of tools they may have to help improve the gap work that we're doing. I believe in sharing the love everywhere. I believe in collaboration, and if me giving FTDNA some insight on something that they're doing is just a part of what I do, I would do it for anybody who wanted to help me in any way too. So the relationship that Mido Yna DNA has with FTDNA, being the other big the Y in mitochondrial DNA, they like us because we sell kits, because people want to upload to us, and we're talking about them. We're talking about their kits, their tests. So that works. We also take kits from YSeq, which is another testing company. We can take YFull kits. We can take all of those kits, and we have a different set of tools than anybody else. If you're an STR geek, you can go on Mido Yna DNA and see all 838 of your YSTR markers in your big 700 test. And don't be confused. A Y700 test is just called a Y700 test. There are actually 838 markers in that test. So you can go on Mido Yna DNA and look at every single little bit of it. So I don't know if that was enough. There's way more I could say.
Let me package and summarize here for us. So for those of you who haven't heard of Mido Yna DNA, it is a separate, independently by Mags run database where you can enter your mitochondrial, which is the direct maternal line kind of test, or the Y DNA, which is the direct paternal line kind of test, results into Mido Yna DNA. So Mido Yna DNA in my mind serves really two key purposes. Number one, it allows those of us who have had DNA tests, mitochondrial or Y, from companies that are now defunct. So there have been, surprisingly, actually, a slew of DNA testing companies that have evolved since 2000 that have gone under for one reason or another. And you may have tested with them, and now you have this data. Maybe it's in a printed out sheet, maybe it's in your email, and there's nothing you can do with it, or at least there wasn't until Mido Yna DNA. So now you can take that data. It has a home, it has a purpose, it has a function you can preserve, especially if you tested someone who's no longer living. Then you can take their results and put them into Mido Yna DNA and give them a place to live on forever, right, Max?
Right.
Forever.
Yep. We're nonprofit, so we're governed by a board, and if something were to happen to me or to somebody else on the team, the board would find someone else to continue, and that, I think that's important.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really important is that we are going to have your information, but we also are working to keep it private. You cannot do a run on our website anywhere where you get more than 10 or 20 people in a list. So the big companies can't just go in and scrape all of our stuff. They would have to do it over and over and over. And I don't think that they would do that. I don't think they have bots designed for that just yet. And thank you so much. You summarized it so well.
Yeah. So that's the first.
That would be great elevator speech.
Yeah. So that's the purpose. The first purpose is a kind of permanent repository for our mitochondrial and Y DNA results that is not tied to any particular company, but is rather held in this bigger pool, theoretically. Right. The second purpose, as Mags alluded to, is that they're working to provide different kinds of tools to help you look at and analyze your data. So our DNA testing companies, as you know, if you've tested at multiple companies on your autosomal DNA, they all kind of have different tools you can use, and it's fun to try something out somewhere. So it's nice to have other options. And one of the things that Mido Yna DNA has really excelled at are, as Max was talking about, some of their Y DNA they're called STRs. So an STR is a short little piece of DNA that repeats, and we test them, lots of them, as she mentioned, for the big Y, hundreds of them. And at Family Tree DNA, where you have the test done, usually, though you can test other places, they don't really do much with all of those STRs. It's really, I don't know, I don't want to say limited, because it's not. They do give you a lot of good information. But like she said, if you're a Y-DNA geek, you can really spend like hours and hours using the tools at Mido Y-DNA that they've worked really hard to provide for people who really want to take that deep dive into Y-DNA.
Right.
So you really do have tools that just aren't anywhere else. And that's really exciting.
We're a great geek team. We get together and watch rocket launches together. You know, we're a geek team. We certainly appreciate the geeks, and the geeks can come on and do all sorts of stuff with their information.
Absolutely, absolutely. So speaking of that, we've talked about some of the current tools that you have, and I think we've covered a little bit about how you've evolved. But what do you see, like what's coming up for Mido Y-DNA? What kinds of things do you have in the pipeline?
Well, like I mentioned briefly, is that I am trying to query our team to ask our team about ideas they might have for us to do outside of the box stuff with the SNP information that we're getting from user entered SNP information in our database, because we definitely are building a database of those as well. We do a lot of work with Rob Spencer's Scaled Innovations. And we can get some information from him. One of which is he has information, a lot of data that's gotten from FTDNA about surnames and how the surnames connect to SNPs in the current time, and how the surnames are reported by the users back in time. And so we're going to be integrating some of that information into our system. We're also working on a redesign of the entire site that's much more beautiful than the basic site that I originally designed. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. So that's coming up. The other thing is like one of the DNA Gap in administrators, that's the DNA group project administrators, asked me if we could design algorithms specifically to look for specific SNPs in mitochondrial or Y-DNA. And she had shopped that around to the other sites. And I said, sure, we'll include that in the new design. We've just got to, when we get close to that point, we're going to talk on the phone and figure out exactly how you want it to work. And we'll see what we can do to figure that out. So I am not averse at all for having people send me ideas that they have for things. And I'm constantly asking people, what would you like to do? What would you like to see? So.
Awesome. That's great. I love just the spirit of collaboration that you guys have. Like you said, you started and you brought on all of these people, and now anybody with ideas, they're all welcome. And I think that's how we make something fantastic. So
Greg Clark, I grabbed Greg Clark as soon as I saw him. I grabbed Greg. Yeah, and he's a great,
he's awesome
idea person. You know, if you say boo to him, he can create a whole thing for you.
Right?
Yeah.
June has this question. How many years has Mido Y-DNA been available?
I started in 2016, and I think we went live in 2018 at the I4GG in San Diego.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's longer than I thought, actually.
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah,
5 years, 6 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have this question from this user. Let me choose.
Oh, look who Greg Clark just showed up.
Did he just show up?
Yeah, he's heckling me from the side there.
He does that too. Oh, can we explain? I just lost the question, but somebody was asking about they want to explore their father's mother's side. So will you talk through that for them?
I'm getting ready to do that. My dad, since he tested at FTDNA, his DNA is in their system for 25 years. So I've got another 15 years to work on his little sample. When I did a tour in November, I waved to him in the cooler as I went by. He's still alive, but I waved to him anyway. I'm gonna get my dad and test his mitochondrial DNA so I can see his mother's mitochondrial DNA, which goes back to a royal line in England, which is going to be fun to see. I already know that my dad matches Tsar Nicholas, but I'm wondering if my grandmother's line, which goes back to a royal line, I'm wondering if that's a real story. So we'll be able to figure that out too. I don't even know what she is yet. So I'm excited. Yes, you can do your dad's mitochondrial DNA.
Absolutely. But if your dad has passed, then you'd want your dad's sister to test, or your dad's sister's child, right? It's all about finding the right person to test. That's part of the challenge of why in mitochondrial DNA testing is that you first have to find the right person to answer your question.
Well, and I worked as a part of the Canadian casualty identification team for a while, and we used mitochondrial DNA explicitly for that work. And so working those trees, knowing that the sons and the daughters inherited it, and that only the daughters passed it on to their offspring, to their sons and daughters, can you find that information? And we use mitochondrial DNA because it has a kind of a longer lifespan in some of the environments that you would find remains in. So that was big for us.
Cool. That's interesting work. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's switch from Mido Yna to Wikitree. If you can tell us just a little bit about, again, I feel like this theme of your life, maybe, Mags, is collaboration. But tell us what is Wikitree and why does it hold this kind of unique position in our community?
So if you have all of these ancestors and you had one place that you could go to find the one guy who wore a blue shirt in your family in the 1820s, and you dropped a pin and you could find him and only him and not 15 people with the same name, you found only him, that would be Wikitree. Wikitree makes it so that one person has one profile who and it's like that for everyone who's ever lived. So one person, one profile, and there's not duplicates. Wikitree started out with that. And they also started out with the collaborative kind of mindset. Now, a lot of people don't know this. Chris Whitten, when he was getting ready to get married, he wanted to introduce his bride-to-be to his family. So he created Wikitree and asked all of his cousins. He sent out invitations to his cousins to come on and add their family information into Wikitree. And it kind of blew up and grew and grew and grew. And there's millions of people. We were looking at a question that Chris had asked about some redesign work that's going on at Wikitree. And over the past 2 weeks, 485,000 people had looked at this question.
Wow.
That's so it's gone from Chris and his cousins and the romantic gesture. Can you imagine a more romantic gesture than that, to this huge expanse of genealogists all over the world working collaboratively to add sources and information and to make the Wikitree healthy. The health of the tree is a big deal. There's a connect-a-thon coming up soon where they're trying to connect profiles that are just kind of hanging out in the air. They're going to find them and connect them to the bigger tree. So it's one big tree.
And I think that level of, it is collaboration, but I feel like I don't know if there's a word that goes one step beyond collaboration.
Yeah. It's like a family. It's like a family. It's so like a family. And even if you're working on other people's information, and if you come up with information or sources or new data that it isn't even what the original profile manager of the profile knows about, you don't have to say, well, this is what it is and slam it into the profile. You can leave a comment and say, hey, I have this idea, or I found this information. And B, you can create a research notes on the profile where you can discuss with the profile manager all of the data and the information and the sources. So there's so much about accuracy and sources and citations on Wikitree that's so good.
Speaking of, tell us about the DNA features specifically, because Wikitree is really unique in these.
Yes, they are. And I can tell you that in the very beginning, there were a lot of people involved in Wikitree that people don't really know about. We have a 9-point honor code that was put together by Pat Richley Erickson.
Hmm.
Blaine Bettinger was originally involved in getting some of the stuff set up on Wikitree. And myself, Peter Roberts, Greg Clark, Karen Lowe, there are a lot of people who work in the background at Wikitree to try and improve on what was built originally and to make it better. When you go to an ancestor's profile on Wikitree, just look them up. And if you look over to the far right of the profile, you'll see a list of DNA connections. There's nowhere else, there's no other site ever that allows you to go to your ancestor's profile and see all of the DNA connections there that are listed of people who have tested. Everybody else gives you a list of people who have tested and don't show you who they connect to. But Wikitree actually takes it and does it. Hey, this ancestor has these people who have tested. And it's really incredible to be able to click on a link and go to Mido Yna DNA or over to GEDmatch and actually check to see if this person really is a match to you. And they match this guy. Oh my goodness, that's the beginning of a confirmation statement. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think what makes Wikitree distinct is not just the web, but it's also the personal living data, right? Because I go in and for my own profile, I'm telling Wikitree I've had a mitochondrial DNA test. This is how to find it on Mido Yna DNA, right? And so I'm providing so much about myself that will allow me then to connect with people in a way that you just can't do in any other family tree site.
Yeah, and it's all about connecting. And we do this funny thing on our Saturday morning live cast at 10 a.m. We always have Saturday morning live cast. We have this connectathon, and this is the little symbol that we do for the connectathon. I have no idea why, but it's connecting people up the tree and collaborate. It's so much fun to be a part of Wikitree, and it's a challenge to be a good genealogist, and it's a challenge to be a collaborative genealogist. But if you embrace it and you can live with having other people say, hey, I'm not sure about that, and have an open mind and say, well, you know what, you may have a point. It's a collaboration is an interesting thing to learn, because for so many years genealogists were hiding everything they were doing in their basement until they published a book. Mm-hmm. But I think there's been a paradigm shift in genealogy towards collaboration. I think it's a good thing.
I think you said that so beautifully. Like, I wish more of us could have that mindset of, I'm going to put out here what I know, knowing that it might not all be right. And when you come and challenge me and tell me I might not be right, I'm not going to get my heckles up. I'm not going to start a fight online and be like, that's interesting. I'm going to be curious about why you think differently than I do. And I'm not going to hold my own personal bias right next to me and use it as a shield. I'm going to be open. I love that. Thank you for saying that. I wish we had more of that. I really do. Yeah, I really do.
And Mido Yna DNA is very collaborative. We are working. I think that Wikitree, the work I've done with Wikitree, really influenced how Mido Yna DNA has been set up and how our team works. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time. I want to ask you two last questions.
What?
I know, it goes by fast. All right. What is the best innovation in genetic genealogy in the last 10 years? What are you like, this was the thing?
That is so unfair. So it only goes back to 2013, technically, or 2014.
Yeah.
So it doesn't include what I think about your work. There you go.
Well, there you go.
I would say I've got 3 on my list, or 4. I would say Blaine Bettinger's Shared Centimorgan project took tons and tons of chaos out of our community, because you don't have to be desperate to find out what a centimorgan means in relationships in what we're doing. So I think that is a huge one. And I think that Johnny Pearl's DNA Painter is huge, because it gives us the opportunity to paint all of our ancestors and know where they fit on our chromosomes, which is just fun. It's geeky fun. Dana Leeds with her Leeds method. She's the mother. She's the mother of all the clustering that we have going on. And people ask me, well, what do I do with my matches? I'm like, go to the Leeds method and follow that. But you know what? When I tell them to Google the Leeds method, your write-up, your blog on how to do it comes up first. So that's cool. And I like that Kevin Borland is doing, trying to recreate our ancestors using living DNA. I
Mm,
think that's fun. I wouldn't say he's like one of the biggest, but I think that he's like a sleeper in that whole list. But those are my top ones, I think. The other thing is I think Big Y DNA is a huge,
yeah.
huge movement forward because it literally has put a pin in the map for me. And it's also moved the research that's been doing on my own surname to an area that wasn't even considered before.
Yeah.
So we're moving that, but they also thought we were golden and we're not. We could be golden, but we're not that glistening and stuff. So yeah.
Well, thank you for answering my question about the one innovation and turning it into like 5.
15 or 20.
But and your DNA guide started 10 years ago. You could have totally added your DNA guide to the list, but it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, well.
I mean, I've been around longer than that, but your DNA guide, the company celebrates 10 years this year. So
Yeah, the DNA guide actually is the top of my list. You interrupted me before I could say it.
all right, last question is why is this work so important to you?
I think that we have a right to our ancestry. I think that as descendants, we can learn and we can benefit by what has happened in the past in our personal lives and our professional lives and how we handle our kids. You know, the way I grew up absolutely has something to do with how my kids were raised and how messed up they may be in life. But yeah, I think that we as ancestors, we have a right to our ancestry. We have a right as descendants to know about our lives, and our lives have been informed by what has happened before us. So I think it's very important, and I think it's important that we share and that we have open tools and we have the ability to collaborate. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thank you. That was beautifully said. I totally agree. Thank
Nathan
you.
Dillon just sent me $20 wire transfer. I'm supposed to mention that he's my favorite author.
Yeah, I saw his comment on there, which I promptly ignored,
Yeah.
but thanks for mentioning him. He's
He
my
sent me
favorite
money, so
too. All right. Well, thank you to all of us who joined us today with Mags and Ask the Experts. I hope you're feeling a little more inspired to collaborate. I
yeah.
think I am for sure. And if you haven't taken a look at Mido Yna DNA or Wikitree in the last little bit, I encourage you to do so. They are both really important parts of what you can use to further your genetic genealogy work in your own family. And I think we need to all take advantage of all the tools that we have. You just don't know what will be that one tipping point that will break you through that brick wall. And that's
It definitely, the Y-DNA, the old database definitely was a tipping point for me. Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month on Ask the Experts. Bye-bye.